All right, let's have a look at those headlines. Sky News reporter, a senior reporter, Trudy McIntosh from Canberra, and another senior reporter, the wonderful Carolyn Marcus, who's regular from Sydney. Ladies, welcome. I mentioned this at the top of the show. Greens Leader Adam Bandt at the Press Club today demanding, $500 billion in extra taxes. This is in return for their support should there be a hung parliament. Trudy calls it Robin Hood economics. I call it disastrous economics. We're desperate to stay competitive. We've got very high wages in Australia. Our region does not. We used to have really cheap power that made us at least cost competitive. We don't have that anymore. I don't know how whacking all these taxes on are going to help us.
Well, it's a huge eye-watering number, isn't it, that $514 billion? I would note in the Parliamentary Library research into how they got that, they said, it's basically a back-of-an-envelope calculation because there's so many variables in how you'd actually calculate how much they're going to pay. Adam Bandt, when he was pressed on this, did a whole series of things today. Wouldn't the companies just pass on this tax impost to customers, and won't that be counterproductive? What about, businesses then wanting to go offshore? So there's a whole series of holes in this, but ultimately what this allows Adam Bandt to do politically is sell to those inner city voters who aren't even that switched on, I'd have to say, to the details of this sort of thing, these big ticket items like adding dental into Medicare. Wouldn't it be great to go to the dentist for free? So that's the politics of this. The fascinating thing on the other side, if there is a hung parliament, is Anthony Albanese and Peter Dutton are not going to want to do complete government deals. This is going to be more about supply and confidence. And the strategy from Anthony Albanese, it's believed, is going to be telling someone like Adam Bandt, do you want to vote with me or Peter Dutton? So he's going to try and play hardball, learning the lessons from 2010.
And what about, Trudy, I'll stay with you, what about the hypocrisy from the Greens? I mean, when Tony Abbott turned up at a rally, and I was there, he was speaking to the crowd, a carbon tax rally, someone behind him puts up a sign. He didn't see it, he was looking at the crowd. Calls for him to resign, he must apologise, terrible, terrible, terrible. Ditch the witch. I reckon Nazi is way worse than ditch the witch. But anyway, Abbott, made the point that he didn't support what was on the sign. But Max Chandler Mather basically brushes it off. He says he doesn't agree with the Nazi, slur at the Prime Minister. But where's the calls for him to go?
And also, don't forget, on the front of the stage, he could not have missed it. There was a fake coffin there with Anthony Albanese's face on the front saying enemy number one. If that sort of rhetoric isn't needed, ASIO boss is talking about turning down the temperature, and to see that in front of the crowd and still go on is pretty bad. I also thought, as you saw in that package there from my colleague Liv Casely, Amanda Rishworth, a cabinet minister, asked on breakfast television to condemn that sign, the Nazi sign. It took 2 answers and a discussion about the right to protest. It's pretty easy, I would have thought, to just say, that's offensive, bad sign. We don't want to see things like that.
Carol, we'll talk to you in a moment about gas shortages, but I mean, this has got to be offensive to the Jewish community yet again.
Yeah, of course it is. I mean, it's not only offensive about the politicians, but it completely minimises the suffering of 6 million Jews and the families and their families, as well as the survivors of the Holocaust and what the Nazis did and inflicted not just on Jews, of course, but others as well. To try and make a comparison between a politician and a Nazi, I mean, it's never acceptable. And I mean, as the old saying goes, the moment you throw Nazis in there, you've lost your argument. So the union better come up with cleverer ways to make their case, because at the moment they have stooped to the lowest, stupidest level, and they've just insulted the entire country in the process.
Right, let's go to that gas modelling out today. The APA group says that we're facing, across the East Coast at least, gas shortages if pending projects remain in limbo. They're pointing the finger at Labor's intervention in the market in 2022. The Teals, the Greens and Independents also, though, have come out today saying they want an end to all new gas projects. They don't want them just in limbo. They want them completely knocked back. And again, with a hung parliament in the offing, this will be sacrificed on the altar of left-wing politics, I suspect.
Well, it's just yet another example of how we're being held hostage to this ridiculous radical green ideology. We have all these gas reserves, gas deposits in our own country, and yet we're being put in a situation where ultimately we're going to have to import it at a much higher price and yet export what we have around the world. I mean, this is Australia's largest gas pipeline operator, APA, who's now warning that this Labor government intervention means we are running the very real risk of an energy market that's not only less reliable and less affordable, but ironically and counterproductively has higher emissions too. I mean, how insane is that? So if things continue to play out as expected, then we're not only going to have to pay much higher energy bills in a cost of living crisis, we're not going to, we're going to be taking colder showers more often, but we're also cementing a more longer term dependence on coal. And I thought coal was the #1 enemy, according to the Greens and Teals anyway, but correct me if I'm wrong.